He had everything: money, power, success, until the morning his son would not wake up. What happened next, when the maid stepped in, changed not just his life, but revealed a secret that shocked everyone. Stay with me, because this story will break your heart, heal it, and leave you questioning what truly matters. Before we begin this powerful story, make sure to subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss our life-changing content. Like and share the channel to support our mission. At Twisting Tales, every story is more than just entertainment. It carries a meaningful message, filled with emotion, wisdom, and inspiration. Join us on this journey of growth, compassion, and transformation. Billionaire panics when his son does not wake up. Then a maid walks in and shocks everyone. They say when you have everything, you stop noticing what truly matters. I was that man. A billionaire by 36. Private jets. Skyscrapers with my name etched in gold. Boardrooms filled with power, not people. And a mansion so large, my own son felt like a stranger in it. His name was Adam. My only child. 6 years old, with the softest curls and eyes too wise for his age. But I was not there to see them sparkle. I missed his first steps. His first words. His tears after nightmares. Because I was chasing numbers. And somehow, I believed love could wait. Until that morning. The nanny had called in sick. The house was too quiet. I walked into Adam's room for the first time in weeks. There he was. Still. Cold. I shook him gently. No response. I called his name. Again. Nothing. Terror clawed up my spine. I yelled. Screamed. But he would not wake up. I called 911. Then collapsed beside his bed, shaking, helpless, powerless. And then, she walked in. Elena. The maid. A woman I barely noticed. Always in the background. Always silent. But not that day. She rushed to Adam, placed a warm hand on his forehead. Low blood sugar, she whispered, calm, focused. From her pocket, she pulled a small packet of honey. Gently opened it. Placed it on his lips. Seconds felt like centuries. And then, Adam stirred. His fingers twitched. His lips moved. He moaned softly, blinking up at her. I collapsed to my knees. Tears burst from a place I had long forgotten existed. Not one of my doctors, not my money, not all my power, had been able to save my son. But this woman, this maid, she had. Later, I found out. Elena was once a pediatric nurse. She had lost her license, not from malpractice, but from defending a child from an abusive parent. She had taken the fall. Silently. With dignity. And had taken this job just to survive. That night, I asked her, "Why did you carry honey?" She looked at me and said, "Because someone has to care enough to be prepared." Those words pierced through me. I had been prepared for everything. Except fatherhood. The next morning, I canceled 3 board meetings. I made pancakes for the first time in my life. Burned every single one. Adam laughed for the first time in weeks. Elena watched from the doorway. That was the beginning of something that would change me forever. But life does not hand out second chances without tests. And mine was just beginning. Elena became more than a maid that week. She became the quiet force that held our home together. Not with commands or presents, but with the kind of strength I had never understood. The kind that speaks in actions, not words. Adam clung to her like a lifeline. He would run to her when his night terrors came. He would hold her hand when I tried to talk to him. At first, I felt jealous. A billionaire, jealous of a maid. But it was not her fault. It was mine. I had built walls made of steel and silence. And now I was watching my son seek warmth elsewhere. One evening, after Adam had fallen asleep in her arms, I found her sitting alone in the kitchen, sipping tea.
"Why him?" I asked.
Her eyes stayed on the steam rising from the cup. "He reminds me of my son," she said quietly.
My chest tightened.
I had never asked about her life. Never cared enough to notice the sadness behind her smile.
"What happened?" I asked. She looked up. "I lost him," she whispered. "Leukemia. He was 5.
The words cut through the air like shattered glass.
I sat down across from her, stunned. "I did not know," I said.
"Of course you did not," she replied gently. "You never asked."
I felt something shift in me.
Like a mirror cracking. The version of myself I had so carefully constructed was beginning to fracture.
"I want to do better," I murmured. She nodded slowly. "Then begin. One day at a time. For him."
From that moment, I made a promise.
No more missed birthdays.
No more empty chairs at dinner. No more hiding behind phone calls and private meetings.
I started small. Reading Adam bedtime stories.
Driving him to school myself. Sitting beside him during his therapy sessions. Even when I felt uncomfortable. Especially when I felt uncomfortable. Because healing was not supposed to be easy. It was supposed to be real. And then something unexpected happened. I started to heal too. Late nights once spent in boardrooms were now spent in kitchens.
Burning cookies. Building Lego castles.
Laughing at jokes with no punchlines.
And Elena.
She was always there. Always watching quietly. Always guiding without asking for credit. But the world outside had not changed. And one day, it came knocking.
A scandal. A betrayal.
Not from strangers, but from my own inner circle. Someone I trusted had stolen millions. My company's reputation was bleeding.
The media swarmed.
Investors pulled out. I stood in my office, once a symbol of my success. Now a tower crumbling beneath me. I was about to lose everything. And yet, the only thing I feared was facing Adam and Elena. I returned home that night, shattered. I opened the door, expecting silence. Instead, I heard music.
Laughter.
Adam ran to me, arms wide open.
"Daddy, come dance."
In the living room, Elena twirled with him, barefoot on the carpet. They were not mourning my empire. They were living in the moment.
And in that moment,
I realized I had already won. But the battle ahead was not over. And the woman who once stood in my shadow was about to become the light I could no longer live without. I stood there, frozen in the doorway.
Not from exhaustion. Not from fear.
But from the realization that I had finally come home. Elena turned and saw me.
She smiled.
Not the smile of someone impressed by wealth, but the smile of someone who had seen my soul crumble.
And stayed anyway. I walked toward them, dropped to my knees,
held Adam in my arms like he was the most fragile thing in the world.
Because he was.
"Are you okay, Daddy?" he asked, his small fingers brushing my cheek. I looked into his eyes and nodded.
"Yes."
"Because I have you." He giggled, then pulled Elena's hand into mine. "Now we are all together." She tried to pull back, uncomfortable with the gesture.
But I held on.
"Elena," I said quietly, "will you sit with me for a moment?"
She hesitated, then nodded.
We sat on the back patio. The night was cool, the sky draped in velvet. Stars blinking like tiny truths. "I do not know where to begin," I admitted.
"Start with what hurts," she said softly. So I did.
I told her everything. How the betrayal at work broke me. How I felt like a failure.
Not just as a CEO, but as a man. As a father.
I told her about the guilt I carried. 4 years wasted. For moments I could never reclaim. For the kind of loneliness that could not be soothed by applause or profits.
She listened. Silent. Steady.
When I was finished, I waited for her to speak.
She reached for my hand. You built towers, she said. Now build people.
Those 4 words settled deep inside my chest. Heavier than gold. Stronger than steel.
I want to, I said.
But I cannot do it alone.
She looked at me.
I never asked you to. In that moment, I knew. She had already saved more than my son. She had saved me too. Not with grand gestures.
But with presence. With truth.
With love that asked for nothing, and gave everything. But love, like life, is never simple. And just when I thought I had found solid ground,
a letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address. Elena read it first. Her hands trembled.
I saw the color drain from her face. What is it?
I asked. She looked at me.
And whispered something that shattered everything I thought I knew. Someone knows who I really am, and they want to destroy everything. Her voice was barely audible.
But her eyes.
They screamed with a fear I had never seen in her before. I took the letter from her trembling hands. My fingers brushed against hers.
Cold. Shaken. Unsteady.
The handwriting was familiar.
Too familiar.
I opened it slowly. Inside were just a few words. But they hit like a hammer to the ribs.
You can play nursemaid all you want, Elena.
But the truth always finds a way out.
You owe me.
And I am coming.
No name. No signature. Just a threat.
I looked up at her. Elena, I said carefully. Who sent this?
She looked away. Her jaw clenched.
Silence wrapped itself around her like armor.
Elena, please, I urged. For Adam. For us.
Tell me the truth.
She stood.
Walked a few steps into the garden. The wind pulled at her dress like it, too, wanted answers. Finally, she turned to me. There is something you do not know, she said. I never meant to lie. I just wanted to disappear.
I waited.
Each second stretching like wire. The man who wrote that letter was my husband, she said, her voice cracking.
My breath caught.
He is the reason I lost my nursing license. The reason my son died. The world shifted beneath me.
He was violent, she continued. Not just to me. To our child.
She looked away, choking back tears. When I tried to leave, he threatened to ruin me. When I reported him, no one believed me. The system protected him. It buried me. Tears welled in her eyes. So I left. Changed my name. Took whatever job I could. And prayed that he would never find me again. My hands curled into fists. And now he has, I said. She nodded. I never meant to bring this into your life. Into Adam's life. I walked toward her. Took her hands. Elena, I said firmly. You saved my son. You saved me. I do not care what you ran from. I care what you ran toward. And I am not letting you face this alone. A sob escaped her lips. You do not understand, she whispered. He will come. He always does. He will twist everything. Turn people against me. He is powerful. I stepped closer. So am I. The night wrapped around us. Not as a threat, but as a vow. I would protect her. Whatever it took.
whoever he was, whatever storm he brought.
Because sometimes the people who walk into your life quietly are the ones worth roaring for. But the roar would have to wait. Because the very next morning, I opened the front door to find a child standing there.
A girl, barefoot, eyes wide, and in her tiny hand, she held a photo of Elena.
She could not have been older than 5.
Hair tangled, dress torn. She looked up at me,
eyes deep with fear, but also something else.
Recognition. I knelt slowly.
"Sweetheart, are you okay?" I asked gently.
She nodded, clutching the photo tighter. It was faded, edges worn, but unmistakable.
Elena, smiling, holding a baby. She lifted the picture toward me. Her lips quivered. "She is my mommy," she said softly.
My heart stalled.
Behind me, I heard footsteps. Elena's voice was faint. "Adam, breakfast is." She froze when she saw the girl. The world around us stopped moving.
I turned to Elena.
Her face turned pale. Her hands gripped the doorway. "Elena, is this your daughter?" I asked, barely above a whisper. She stepped forward, like each movement was made of glass. The girl looked up.
"Mommy."
Elena collapsed to her knees. Tears poured down her cheeks. She opened her arms. The girl ran into them. Their sobs broke the silence, cracked it open like thunder. I stood frozen, watching something sacred unfold before me. A reunion that carried both unspeakable joy and unbearable pain. I waited until Elena's breathing steadied, until the girl, her daughter, rested her head against her chest. Then I asked the question trembling in my chest.
"Elena, how?"
She looked up at me,
eyes swollen, voice hoarse.
"Her name is Lila," she whispered.
"My daughter."
"I gave birth to her in hiding, after I left him.
But he found us, took her,
said I would never see her again,
that I was unfit,
that no court would listen." She closed her eyes, holding Lila tighter. I searched for years.
With nothing. No help. No hope.
And then I stopped, because the grief was killing me. She opened her eyes again. And now she is here. A million questions roared in my mind. How had Lila escaped? Who brought her here?
What danger followed?
But none of it mattered more than the moment I was witnessing.
Lila, Elena,
reunited by fate, or something far more fragile. Hope that never fully died. I reached out, placed my hand on Lila's back. "You are safe now," I said gently. "I promise you. Both of you." Elena looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Not the billionaire. Not the employer. But the man who had fallen. And chosen to rise not alone, but beside her. And as the sun rose over the horizon, casting golden light over the stone path and garden leaves, we all stood on the edge of something new. But peace was never promised. And just as I lifted Lila into my arms, my phone buzzed. A single message lit up the screen. "She is not yours to keep." The words on the screen bled into my chest like ice. "She is not yours to keep."
No name, no number. But I knew. We both knew. Elena's ex.
The man who haunted every shadow of her past. The man who stole her daughter.
And now, somehow, had found us again.
I locked the phone screen, held Lila a little tighter, felt her small heartbeat against my chest, the fragility of her frame, the weight of what this message meant. Elena looked at me. "He knows she is here."
I nodded.
She reached for Lila, cradling her instinctively. "I cannot let him take her again,"
she whispered.
I would rather die. No one is taking her, I said firmly. I will not allow it. But deep inside, a storm was gathering. My name, my wealth, my influence. It had saved me from many battles. But this was not a courtroom. This was not a boardroom. This was war. For a child. For a woman who gave up everything. For a life stolen, piece by piece. I will call security, I said. I will call the best lawyers. I will call every contact I have in law enforcement. She shook her head slowly. You do not understand, she said, voice trembling. He does not use doors or courts. He uses fear. People. Connections buried in places that never see daylight. He is not just cruel, he is clever. I stood in silence, processing the weight of her words. This was not just about the law. This was about survival. The front gate intercom buzzed. We both froze. It buzzed again. I moved toward the screen near the door. Pressed the camera feed. A black SUV. Blacked out windows. No license plate. The buzzer went silent. And then, a knock. Not at the front gate. At the side door. The servant's entrance. Elena's breath caught. She grabbed Lila and backed into the hallway. I stepped closer to the door. Heart pounding. Pulse in my ears like a war drum. Another knock. Deliberate. Rhythmic. Unhurried. Then a voice. Open up, Elena. You owe me something. I turned toward the hallway. But Elena was already gone. Vanished into the house. Instinctively protecting her child. I knew I had only seconds. So I did what I never thought I would do. I opened the door. And there he stood. Not a monster. Not a beast. A man. Plain clothes. Cruel eyes. Smile sharp enough to bleed. You must be the billionaire, he said with mock politeness. Nice house. I said nothing. He stepped forward, uninvited. But I blocked his path. I do not care who you think you are, I said. You are not walking into this house. He laughed. Slow. Cold. You think your money can stop me? He sneered. She is mine. She always has been. No, I said, meeting his stare. She was never yours. You only controlled her because no one stood in her way. Well, he said, eyes narrowing. Let us see how long you last standing there. Before I tear it all down. His words echoed like gunfire. And in that instant, I knew. This was not just a fight for Lila. Or Elena. It was a fight for truth. For freedom. For every scar Elena carried beneath her silence. And I would fight it with everything I had. Even if it cost me everything. He stood there. Smug. Confident. Dangerous. The kind of man who believed love was ownership. And fear was loyalty. But what he did not know was that Elena was no longer alone. And I was no longer the man who measured life by profit margins and stock prices. I stared him down. Unshaken. Unmoved. I built billion-dollar companies, I said calmly. But this family, is the greatest thing I will ever protect. Behind me, Elena appeared. Lila clutched to her side. Eyes wide, but no longer afraid. And then, something unexpected happened. She stepped forward. Not behind me. Not in my shadow. But beside me. Elijah, she said, calling him by name for the first time. I am not yours. Not now. Not ever again. Her voice did not tremble. It rang through the walls of that house like thunder. Breaking chains. Shattering years of silence. Freeing her. I survived you.
I rebuilt myself.
And I found the courage to live again. He laughed bitterly.
But his power, it was gone.
Because nothing frightens a man like him more than a woman who is no longer afraid.
He stepped back.
This is not over, he muttered.
No, I said. It is.
Because we have already won. I had already contacted the authorities. Already called in every favor. And with the evidence Elena had secretly kept hidden. He was arrested that same day.
Charged. Exposed. Finished.
Not just by my power,
but by her truth. Weeks passed.
Lila began to smile more. To sleep without waking in fear. Adam called her his sister. Without being told to. Our home, once built on cold architecture and distance, now echoed with laughter, pancake breakfasts, and bedtime stories that ended with "I love you."
And Elena?
She did not go back to hiding. She opened a small clinic with my help.
For women like her.
Women who had been silenced.
Abandoned. Broken. She called it New Light. Not in her name, but in her son's. And
I never went back to being the man I was. Because success, I had learned, is not measured in towers of steel,
but in hearts you help heal.
Moral of the story. Wealth can build empires, but only love can build homes. Only courage can rebuild lives. And only truth can set us free. Sometimes, the greatest success story is not how high you rise, but how deeply you learn to care. Let this story remind you, power means nothing without compassion, and the quietest hearts often carry the loudest truths. Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story. If it moved you, share it, comment below, and tell someone. You are never alone.